Hi everybody, this is Hal for Stalking the Wild Autoharp, and I am terrified to make this video. This is going to be a video about Autoharp chord bar layouts and the string schedules on Autoharp and how those things kind of go together. What's a string schedule? String schedule is the list of note names that your strings cover as you go up. And on a chromatic Autoharp, the standard layout starts F, G, C, D, E, F, F sharp, G, A. So it skips some notes in the bass octave. Why? And what problems can arise from that? And all of this comes from the issue that people raise with me in my videos. Why don't you show us your left hand while you play? I'm playing like this and I'm doing the buttons down here and you can't see that, and I get that, and I'm doing it on purpose. Hasn't occurred to me. It's because you'll try to copy it, and I'm not using a layout that everybody is in. My buttons might be different than yours. Your buttons might be the same as mine, but if they're different and you can't follow it, then you're going to be confused. And unfortunately, there's more than 2 layouts. There's about 20 layouts that people use, and I can't match what everybody's doing unless everybody wants to put their chromatic Autoharp in Brian Bauer's layout. So I'm going to be talking about different layouts and the ins and outs of, in this video, I'm going to talk about the Brian Bauer's layout and the Oscar Schmidt layout, the Oscar Schmidt standard layout, and some of the fallbacks or drawbacks of each of those, and the whys and the hows and the wherefores, so that you can maybe try it yourself. And in putting this together, all by way of introduction, the thing has ballooned out into all this information, and so much so that I've had to script it, make notes for myself. And this is just part 1. It's turned into like a 3-parter. And so there's a lot of information that I'm going to cover. So I've got my phone here, and I've got my phone on a gooseneck so that I can turn it down and up so that you can look at things that are on the table in front of me here. And I'm bending over so that my head doesn't get cut off, so that I can look into the camera and have it set down a little bit lower. And so I hope this isn't too long. I've already gone on long in the introduction, and you can tell that I'm just winging it because I like to, but if I just wing it all the time, I'm going to forget to give you certain information that's important, and then I'm going to go, oh, darn it, I forgot to give that information or this information. So I'm hoping that I can catch it all as I go. So we're going to start not with an Autoharp and not with a button layout, but we're going to start with my old friend, the 12-slice pizza called the Circle of Fifths. We looked at this a few months back when I was talking about using your chord cards to track out and map your chord buttons to different notes in your melody. You can go back and look at that video if you want. It's called Using Those Chord Cards. But right now I'm going to put this down on the table and aim my camera down so that I can show you some things about this. So this is your Circle of Fifths. And this, by the way, is the magical music theory rubric for Western music of all kinds, and it has to do with your chords and scales and how they overlap each other. We're not going to be dealing with this stuff on staffs out here today, although it's pretty fascinating. We're going to be dealing with these 12 little pizza slices that go around here. And this is called the circle of fifths. And the reason that they're called fifths is because each letter is 5 letter names above the one below it. For example, E. E is 5 above A. A, B, C, D, E. And then E, F, G, A, B. And so on around the 5s. C, D, E, F, G, G, A, B, C, D, D, E, F, G, A, etc., etc. It's 5 plus 5 plus 5 plus 5 plus 5 plus 5 plus 5, and it all wraps around and comes back to C at the beginning. Okay, when I come at it from the outside of the circle with my fingers, if I put my middle finger on the key of C, my ring finger is going to fall on G, and my index finger is going to fall on F. I'm doing this with my left hand. If I do it with my right hand, it's going to be opposite. So, for the moment, assuming that I'm a right-handed player, and I am, even though I'm a left-handed person, I play right-handed, my left hand goes on the chord bar buttons, like this. C, F, G. And if you look at the buttons on an Autoharp, in this case in Brian Bauer's layout, and I've actually taken a photograph to show you rather than laying out an Autoharp here because it gets into a space issue. Anyway, here's what I'm showing you. C, F, G. It's right there. And this cycle right here follows the circle of fifths. B flat, F, G, C, D, A, E. It's right here. B flat, F, C, G, D, A, E. That's the musical logic of the buttons being in the order that they're in. They follow circle of fifths. Furthermore, when I reach out with my finger, I hit A minor. I reach out with my finger, I hit A minor. And see, this follows the circle of fifths as well. G, D, A, E, B. G minor, D minor, A minor, E minor, B minor. So you see this segment is what we're looking at of the whole circle of fifths. The Autoharp doesn't continue around the flat side or the very sharp side. It just plays in these basic keys over here, which is where folk music and country music is most often played. If you were playing classical music or you were playing hymns or something like that, you'd get into some of these really flat or sharp keys, but we don't deal with those in Autoharp land. So we're dealing mainly with this half or this 2/3 of the circle. Okay? So that's the logic of having your minors right next to your majors that go together. This is called the relative minor, and they are the A is either 6 up from the C or it's 3 down from the C. C, B, A. G, F, E. D, C, B. There's a relationship that is unbreakable between those, and they are related in terms of the scales that they play, and they go together. Now, that is the beauty of this Brian Bauer's layout, because they go together and they are parked right together in relation to each other. So you just reach out and the chords you need for your key are right there. But in the Oscar Schmidt layout, If you're playing in key of C and you need an A minor, well, it's way over here. And then G, it's way over here. So what they've done is they have parked the minor next to the 7th. G minor, G7. D minor, D7. A minor, A7. E minor, E7. But these don't go together. If you look on here, your G7 is here, your G minor is all the way over there. They belong to totally different keys. And you seldom will use that combo of things. The very first Autoharps were 3-button Autoharps. So they had 7 notes on them, sometimes repeating, but C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D. It didn't have any of the black notes on the Autoharp. And by the way, I am assuming you know why I call them black notes, because on the piano keyboard, those are the notes that are painted black. And because they only had 7 notes, that was pretty much the string schedule. Sometimes they would start on a low F. F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, on up to C. But then they said, well, wouldn't it be cool if we could get 2 keys on there? Because when you're singing, you can't sing every song in the same key. You can sing every song in one of 2 keys usually. So let's do a 2-key Autoharp. So they started giving you a B flat note as well, which gave you the key of C and the key of F, because the key of F uses one black note. And so they put that note in there where it belonged, and they started giving you an extra chord bar so that you could play in those 2 keys, because they needed to give you a B flat chord for the key of F. And so now they're rolling along and they've added a bass note. Then they said, well, okay, we've gone over to the flat side, but some people want to sing in G, or some people want to play along with a string band, and wouldn't it be cool if, I'm hypothesizing the questions, but wouldn't it be cool if people could play in G too? So let's give them a B flat, but let's also give them an F sharp. So what they're doing is, let's look at the circle of fifths again. What they've done is originally they gave you these. They said, wow, with 1 more string, we could have that chord too. And we could play then in the key of F. And they said, wow, with 1 more string, we could have this chord too, and we could play in G, C, and F. So they added a B flat string, and they added an F sharp string to give you the key of F and the key of G there and there. And now you could play in F and G. And you can see out here in the notes, this key has a B flat in it, and this key has a G sharp in it. And this has none of those. So, by adding these notes in, they were adding strings. Now here's the thing about strings, and this is a very important rule to the Autoharp. And it's here where I go to my script. One thing they discovered about Autoharp and its construction and the number of strings that go onto it, the strings can't be too long on an Autoharp. Mechanically, it doesn't work to have a really long Autoharp so you can have super bass. Super long strings make good bass notes. It's true. But they can't be too long on the Autoharp because the damping of a felt in a little spot on a really long string doesn't work very well. Now, if the string is shorter, even if it's fatter, it tends to work better. So that's why our auto harps are only as long as they are, and they can't be a whole lot longer. So that's rule 1. Rule number 2. You can't have too many strings. So you can't have the strings can't be too long, and the harp can't be too wide. You can't have too many strings stacked in there, because the wider it is, the wider the chord bar has to be, and you're pushing on one single point along that chord bar, and it doesn't damp very well at the far ends when you are pushing on that little point in the middle. And so the harp can't be too long, it can't be too wide. Hence the strings can't be too long, and you can't have too many of them. Well, what is too many? Well, I guess they decided that 36, 37 is pretty much the max that you can put on there, although we've been known to build up to 48 on there. And I've played auto harps with more strings, and believe me, they can be very tiring to play, especially as we get older. And a lot of the demographic with auto harps tends to be older folks, retired folks. As we get older, we can't push as hard, and so the auto harps can't be wider. And so there's these physical limitations of the strings involved. As we start making more and more keys on the auto harp, we start sticking in more strings. So we're starting to push it towards how many we can put on there. That's why there's only 5 good keys. Now, the reason, okay, let's go back and talk about our different layouts now. Okay, now hopefully you can see this. We have the Brian Bowers layout on the top, and we have the Oscar Schmidt layout on the bottom. Oscar Schmidt layout puts, now we're assuming that my hand, my button hand, is entering the harp from this side, which assumes that I'm playing in the upright auto harp position. If you play down flat, then your hand comes in from the other side, and that requires other setup things. Let's talk about this though first. On the Oscar Schmidt layout, the majors are in this bottom row. We call it the bottom row because the bass strings are over here and the treble high strings are over here. The bottom row, that's where your majors are, okay? And they follow circle of fifths arrangement. Good layout for the majors, okay? Now, the minors, or excuse me, the sevenths are in, they are related to where the majors go, but not closely related. In other words, C, F, G, G7, G, D, C, D7, D, G, A, A7. So you've got this relationship between A and A7, D, D7, G, G7. But the way this works is that instead of playing C, G, F, you'll play C, G7, F, and you'll end up in this little triangle like this. And so you end up playing with G7 most of the time instead of regular old G, or G most of the time instead of G7. That's the way it works on the Oscar Schmidt layout. You got the little triangles. The little triangles are kind of crampy along the back of your hand, and it forces a bend in your knuckle here, like that. When you're like this, it forces a bend in this finger here, because this finger is longer. So those are just inherent things in the layout. Now, on the Brian Bowers, you've got the same circle of fifths, except it's here in the middle row. And that allows you to stack the seventh right behind the major. So you've got C, G, G7. Here's key of C. C, F, G7, just like here. C, F, G7. C, F, G7. Same order, but then when you need your seventh, you just bend your finger back like this. And so you've got that close relationship. Furthermore, down here, if you want your relative minor, you have to go over there to get it. You have to go over there to get it. You have to go over there to get it. It's the same. That's not even the relative minor. We'll get to that in a minute. It's the same relationship, but it's kind of in a weird spot, in an unrelated spot where it doesn't need to be. So, this is one of the reasons for the Brian Bowers layout. And this layout was concocted by Brian Bowers on his diatonic autoharps. On a diatonic autoharp, well, okay, let's talk about another interchange, and that's when you have to go from A minor to E7. That is a very common change in folk music, and that is a lot more convenient here. That's a convenience if you play in minors a lot. It's a convenience in the Oscar Schmidt layout, because that is right here, A minor, E7. Super easy. Not so easy here because it's a much further reach. Brian Bowers doesn't have those two chords on the same autoharp. He plays diatonic autoharps that only play in one key. And so he's dealing with a slice like this. And if he ever needs that, he can't do it. He's got to either play it a different way or not play that song. That's one of the limitations of the diatonic autoharp, which we're not really talking about here. So these are the two layouts that we see most. Now, there's other good layouts. There is Joanne Smith's unified layout, and Joanne has that all plotted out on her website and in her videos. And so I will I will defer to her to talk about the benefits of that layout. And it's sort of a compromise between the two, I think. I think she's still got this going on. She's got her majors here. Well, I'll let her talk about it. In the Brian Bowers layout, there are three chords that have to be changed. That they give you certain three chords in the Oscar Schmidt that are totally useless for Oscar Schmidt layout or Brian Bowers. And then, so those chords have to go away and they have to be replaced with three useful ones so that you've got them. And I'm going to show you this right here. Here we are with our two layouts again. We've got the Oscar Schmidt layout on the bottom and the Brian Bowers on the top. Now, the Brian Bowers, they've given you three chords that you don't have in the Oscar Schmidt. The Oscar Schmidt gives you three that you don't need. Even in the Oscar Schmidt, you don't really need them. Those are these: E flat, A flat, and C minor. Reason you don't need these, remember all that stuff that I said about the string layout? Well, the string layout on a standard chromatic auto harp does not give you every note in the bass octave because of the it can't be too wide rule. That you can't have too many strings on the auto harp, and so they cut out a bunch of strings on the bass notes for the keys that you can't play in. So then they give you 3 chords that don't have, or they give you 2 chords that don't have good bass support. The E flat chord, terrible. A flat chord, even worse. It couldn't be worse. You just don't have any bass notes on that chord, and so you have to play up at the top of the harp to get those chords. And then they give you a C minor, which isn't bad, but it's not very related to the chords that you are the keys that you're going to be playing in that sound good on your harp. So we say, let's pitch these 3 and turn those 3 into the ones that they didn't give you down here. Notice they don't give you a B minor and they don't give you an F sharp minor, which are critical for key of G, key of D, and key of A. And here you have those keys. You're playing in the key of G, and so your B minor is right over here. You're playing in the key of D, and you've got an F sharp minor, and it's the relative minor for the key of A, and that's important. And so we wanted you to have those, so we pulled those chords that were pretty useless in the Oscar Schmidt layout, and we changed them to B minor, F sharp, and E, so that you have more complete keys and all the chords you need to play in those various keys. Key of A is slated a little bit because it really should have a C sharp minor or a G sharp minor, but those also sound terrible. This is one of the things now about when you start in either arrangement, when you start getting towards what I call the edges of the world, down here and down here, you start dealing with keys and chords that don't have good bass notes. And you also start dealing with keys and chords where you go, gosh, if I only had that one extra chord, I know, because I would reach over and push a button right there and it would be right there. But it's not there. Or you want a chord that belongs up here. You don't have it. And that's just one of the limitations of the auto harp, because you don't have all of the chords. So, what do you do when you're playing in the key of A and you want that G sharp minor, or you want that C sharp minor? You don't have it. Deal with it. Instead of doing it in A, do it in G. It's only a whole step down, and you've got the chords you need to do the song. So anyway, there's some reasons, some things to chew on, and it's going to take me forever to edit this. So thanks for watching. Bye-bye. Oh boy.